Treasure Island, written by Robert Louis Stevenson, is a fascinating coming-of-age story involving pirates, treasure, and the adventure of a young man named Jim Hawkins. The story begins at an old inn just outside the city of Bristol in England, where Jim Hawkins and his mother live and work tirelessly to accommodate people from all over the world. As Bristol is a coastal city, Jim and his mum are no strangers to sailors rocking up, looking to spend a night at their inn. And one night, an injured-looking sailor rolls up to the inn, and the sailor gives his name as Billy Bones. He assures Jim that he's just passing through for the night and would like to seek medical attention in Bristol the next day. Jim is a little bit suspicious that Billy Bones could be a pirate, because pirates never pay. So Jim asks for payment in advance, but Billy Bones is actually fine with it, so he just pays for the night and even gives Jim a little bit extra. So the next morning arrives, and Jim's going about his usual daily routine. Cleaning the corridors, cleaning the rooms after the guests leave, and it isn't uncommon for guests that pay in advance to leave without checking out. So when Jim knocks on the door of Billy's room, and there was no answer, he lets himself in. Jim slowly opens the door and just peeks around just to make sure Billy still isn't sleeping. To his horror, Billy Bones is lying on the floor, and Billy Bones is dead. Jim quickly closes the door, runs downstairs to tell his mum that there's a dead sailor in room number 3, and both of them run to the room. A dead body in a room isn't good for business in an inn, and it's unlikely that anyone knew where Billy Bones was anyway, so they agreed not to tell anyone and just dispose of the body carefully. Once the body has gone, and Jim's cleaning the room thoroughly, making sure there's no traceable hints that Billy was ever there, he notices something on the bedside table. A piece of paper with an ink spot in the middle. Jim knows exactly what this is. The black spot is a well-known symbol of guilt, and it carries a punishment of death. This wasn't used by everybody. This was only used by pirates. Billy Bones was a pirate, and now Billy Bones is dead. So Jim starts rummaging through the bag that Billy Bones left and finds nothing but old clothes and some food. At the bottom, however, Jim feels something made of paper, so he pulls out a tattered old piece of rolled up paper, and it's wrapped with a bow. Jim is quite intrigued. This could be a love letter to a wife or a lover. It could be a simple sketch of a faraway land. So Jim cuts off the ribbon. He unrolls the piece of paper on the table. It reveals a map with an X on it. Now Jim starts to get a little excited. This isn't a love letter or a sketch. This is a map, but not just any old map. This is a treasure map, and there must be treasure buried there. The overly excitable Jim sits back, tries to relax and calm himself down. He takes a long look at the map. He doesn't know if he's being realistic about this, or if he's just being his usual fanciful self. There is one man, however, who would be able to help him in this, and he knows exactly what to do. So Jim gathers some belongings. He rushes off into the bustling city centre of Bristol. The city centre is a particularly busy day that day, but Jim doesn't even notice anyone. He's just determined to get to his old trusted friend, Dr. Livesey. Dr. Livesey always visited one particular public house after his work as a family doctor, and Jim darts into the place to see his old friend. Jim shows Dr. Livesey the map, and he knows he can trust Dr. Livesey, so he tells him how he got it. The two discuss it for a while, and Dr. Livesey is absolutely convinced. This is a real treasure map. He knows that Jim isn't going to make something like this one up. Meeting in a pub, however, isn't always private, and there's a group of older gentlemen listening into the conversation. As luck would have it, they're experienced sailors, and they are willing to help for a small payment. Dr. Livesey returns home. As he's one of the wealthiest gentlemen in Bristol and very well respected, he thinks long and hard about funding a voyage like this. It's going across the seas to find real treasure. It's tempting, but he isn't the one to gamble. However, given Jim's story of how he got the map and the offer of help from the gentleman in the pub, he sees no reason to not take this gamble. Dr. Livesey is going to fund the voyage. From the pub that he and Jim met in, Dr. Livesey knows the cook very well, one of the finest cooks in the Bristol city. Dr. Livesey enlists the help of the cook John Silver to look after Jim on the voyage. The gentleman from the pub seemed trustworthy, but given the value of this voyage, he doesn't want to take any chances. Unfortunately for Dr. Livesey, just the day before they are due to set sail, he comes down with the flu, and he's bedridden on his own advice. Dr. Livesey trusts the cook, John Silver, and tells him to meet Jim at the docks the next morning to look after Jim the whole journey. Jim Hawkins arrives at 6 o'clock the next morning. It's a breezy and chilly morning on the docks. John Silver, though, is there to greet Jim as instructed, and he informs Jim of Dr. Livesey's sickness. Jim is a little bit worried, but if Dr. Livesey can trust John Silver, then he can trust John Silver. Silver shows Jim to the boat, and Jim is left in absolute awe. Such a magnificent sailing boat. He's never seen anything like this before. Silver informs Jim that the ship is called the Hispaniola, and this is the ship that's going to take them on their treasure hunt. Both the ship and her crew are ready to embark. The ship sets sail out of the docks on its adventure. Silver asks Jim if he'd mind being a cabin boy, responsible for running errands for the captain. That way, Silver could keep an eye on Jim to make sure no harm comes to him. Jim would have agreed to anything at that moment in time. He is way too excited to even contemplate any job that needs doing. A few days into the voyage, Jim overhears one of the sailors talking to Long John Silver. Now, he can't quite make out exactly what they're talking about, as they're speaking so quietly, but he picks out a couple of words, and they're not words he wanted to hear. These men aren't the honest bunch of sailors he thought them to be. These men are pirates. As these men are pirates and cannot be trusted, Jim finds it difficult to sleep at night, and one night he needs some fresh air. He decides to go out and walk around the deck, trying to come to terms with what's happening. He hears a group of them having a conversation on the deck of the Hispaniola, and tries to firstly not be seen, and secondly to listen in on the conversation. He hears them hatching a plan, and one of them says, "We'll let him lead us to the treasure, and then we'll kill him." Terrified for his own life and succumbing to seasickness from the rough seas, Jim is trying to think about nothing more than just the treasure. He must find this treasure, and he must try to survive. Eventually, though, the ship arrives at an island where Jim, Long John Silver, and several other members of the crew get off the ship and row to land. Long John Silver knows this island already, he tells Jim. He's been here once before. Once on land, Jim tells the pirates to wait exactly where they are while he goes off and searches for what it was he came here for: treasure. Jim knows he cannot trust the pirates, but he walks away from them, alone, and follows the map. Following it carefully through the jungle of this island, he turns around to make sure nobody is following him. He looks back at the map again and makes sure he's still on the right track, but then he turns around again. Jim is absolutely paranoid about being followed. He isn't, however, so careful about his footprints, and pirates will be pirates. The pirates are, of course, following Jim's footprints through the jungle and along the path. They are ready to carry out their deadly plan once Jim has led them to the treasure. The journey is long and tiring for Jim, but eventually he manages to find a place marked X on the map. "This must be the place," he says to himself. Jim is still scared for his life, and as soon as he sits down on the spot and turns around, he sees the pirates, and not so far behind him. Jim, of course, panics, but there's nowhere else for him to go. One of the pirates seizes hold of him, and Long John Silver walks up to Jim, and he tells him that he's been to this island before. It was a long time ago when he worked under the infamous Captain Flint. Long John Silver started a mutiny on the old captain's ship and left the old pirate captain here along with the treasure. One of the pirates, loyal to Captain Flint, stole the treasure map and escaped. That pirate was Billy Bones. Long John Silver was the pirate who issued Billy Jones with the black spot that Jim found. Two pirates start furiously digging in the ground to try to find this long-lost treasure. They're working hard and there's nothing Jim can do but watch. Jim knows what the pirates are going to do with him after they've found the treasure. Now he's just wondering if they're going to kill him there and then, or if they're going to leave him on the island to rot. Bang! A gunshot rings out. Bang! Another. Bang! And another. Someone is shooting at the pirates, killing them outright. The pirate holding Jim runs off in a panic, and Jim doesn't know what to do. He just crouches down and hopes that he's not next. After a few seconds, the gunshots stop, and Jim's still alive. He looks around, and all he sees right there are 3 dead pirates lying on the ground, blood oozing out of their bodies. Someone has shot them and saved Jim's life. Emerging from the trees is an old man with long grey hair and a beard, holding a smoking gun. It was him that shot the pirates. When he gets to Jim, he introduces himself as none other than Captain Flint. After all this time, he's managed to survive on the desert island, dug up the treasure, and hide it in a cave that he's since called home. He knew that Long John Silver would one day return. Captain Flint offers Jim a deal. He will give him half of the treasure in exchange for safe passage home. Many of the pirates aboard the Hispaniola were loyal to Captain Flint, their true captain, but they were powerless at the time to stop the mutiny. Jim needn't be asked twice. He agrees. Captain Flint and Jim walk to the cave where Flint has been keeping the treasure all this time. And when Jim feasts his eyes upon this treasure, Jim is left gobsmacked. His eyes light up and his face shines yellow from the glow of the gold. He can't believe what he's seeing, and half of it is his. Jim and Captain Flint walk back to the Hispaniola with the treasure. As Captain Flint said, once the pirates saw him, they were very happy to see their old captain still alive, and he even had the treasure. Jim and Flint shake hands to agree their deal and set sail back for Bristol with the hoard of treasure. True to his word, Captain Flint only kept half of the treasure and gave the other half to Jim, after paying the pirates. He took the Hispaniola back as his own. Jim now knows that some pirates can be trusted, and they're not all that bad. But still, he vows never to go treasure hunting again.